it on another screen.
Christina,
like...
if it can be of any help, would you like me to move your slides while you speak? Let's say if it helps you, just send me your presentation via email and you just say next slide and I'll do it for you. In any case, I'll be speaking before you, so that's no problem at all for me to do it.
Okay, let's do that. Yeah, let's do that. I mean, why not? I think it's a bit painful, but I don't...
If it's easier for you, I don't mind at all.
I mean, it's okay, you know, it's not like it's a problem, but this morning, you know, I was like, what is this slide about again? Oh, yes, you see, because I don't have my notes, but it's okay. Listen, I'll send it to you. In any case, I appreciate your proposal, and I will see if I can still find a solution in the meantime.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, it doesn't work. Doesn't work. Unless I do this. Maybe
try the slides.
This. And now, oh, okay, I think I have a workaround. Give me a second. And now I will reshare. And I will, this one. Let's see. Is it working?
It's working.
Yes.
However, we see the notes. Let's say you see when you have the screen with the other slide
Okay.
next to, and we have the note somehow.
Update
There's no note there.
differently. What about this now? Yes.
It's
Now
Now
perfect.
it's perfect.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Excellent.
Much better.
Hi, Isabel. In the meantime, you joined us. Thank you
Hi,
very much
everybody.
for joining us and representing UN Habitat.
Thank you for
to
inviting
see.
me.
And we are still waiting for Mayor Bampufe from the city of Dodoma. But
Shall I
hope he
test
will...
my sharing screen maybe in the meantime? Just quickly.
Please do, yes.
I just want to make sure it works.
Colleagues, I have just one thing to mention, that it seems that there are 5 attendees that are able actually to hear the test that we're doing. So maybe, you know, I don't know, to the colleagues from the Global City Hub, if you can, for now, as we are still in the test session, if you could reserve it only for the panelists, that would be great. Thank you.
Sure.
And then, well, to the attendees, bear with us. We are going to be with you very soon.
I hope it was okay, right? The slides?
It was okay, yours. Yes.
All right. Thank you.
So I think we are ready to go. Good. Good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, of course, wherever you are online. Welcome to our webinar on the citiverse and what citiverse can bring to local and regional government. My name is András Törényi from the Global Cities Hub. I have the pleasure to co-organize this session with our dear colleague from ITU, Cristina Bueti, and to moderate the presentations and the discussions afterwards. Please note that this session is recorded, and for those who want to revisit it, or those who will not be able to join, it will be put on Global Cities Hub YouTube channel. We are still waiting for one panelist to join, but let me start with the presentations. First of all, let me say that the mandate of the Global Cities Hub is to connect local and regional governments to international organizations, mostly in Geneva. And that's why it's a special pleasure to work with ITU on this important subject. With ITU, we have an ongoing collaboration in different areas, from the WASIS forum to the Partner to Connect initiative, but also on topics like smart cities and citiverse, now with Cristina Buetti. We will have an excellent panel to advise and to discuss today. The mayor of Dodoma, Mr. Davis Van Pupe, Dr. Okan Geray, strategic planning advisor at Dubai Digital Authority, Ms. Isabel Wetzel, program management officer at UN Habitat, Ms. Cristina Martinez, who is deputy head of the Smart Technologies for Communities unit at the European Commission, and as I already mentioned, Ms. Cristina Buetti, who is Counselor Metaverse at ITU. And with this, let me turn to you, Cristina, as the co-organizer, to make some opening remarks. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Andras, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to welcome you all to this online event, which is jointly organized with the Global City Hub. Firstly, I would like to thank our partner, the Global City Hub, because, you know, as Andras mentioned, we have a long-standing partnership, and today's event is just an example of the many activities that we're doing, especially in the area of smart cities. The age of metaverse is here, and we fit the citiverse. And when we talk about citiverse, probably we should be talking about citiverses or metaverses, as there is certainly more than one. At the heart of today's discussion is also the potential of the citiverse to revolutionize urban development, answering to the challenges of sustainable urban development and contributing also to the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. Digital transformation and especially emerging technologies like the metaverse are not merely trends, but they become necessary for local and regional governance. And especially with cities growing at an unprecedented pace, our traditional infrastructure development and equitable delivery of services are being tested. This is where probably Citiverse, with its interoperability, security, inclusivity, challenges and promises, can offer people-centered solutions. We firmly believe in the importance of an inclusive, multi-stakeholder approach, and we are dedicated to actively listening to the needs of local regional governments, sharing insights and providing guidance on the principles to follow when shaping a citiverse. So as we embark on this journey together, let us keep in mind that the citiverse is more than just a concept. It's really an opportunity to reimagine urbanization, to build inclusive, resilient, and sustainable cities that can make really a tangible difference to millions of people around the world. Thank you so much. And Andres, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Cristina. And once again, thank you for ITU for working with the Global Cities Hub on this important issue. Let me say one organizational advice. We will start with some presentations. You will see we invited really experts who will talk about different angles of this issue. And afterwards, we will animate online discussion, because really the added value, we believe, is the exchange between you, the experts, and our audience. So I encourage the audience to put your questions in the chat box, and I will try to evoke as many questions as possible. The issue is very actual. Strangely enough, today in Seoul, the Asia Pacific Urban Summit just had 2 sessions on smart cities and digitalization. And let me quote you one of the points from the joint statement of local governments at the Asia Pacific Urban Forum to set the scene. Point 6 says that local governments committed to utilize people-centered smart technologies such as community-based early warning systems and digital twins as part of local disaster preparedness, response, and recovery efforts. Identified in close partnership with the communities, these technologies shall be responsive to local context and needs. And let me use this as the guiding principle of our discussion today, how the potential of citiverse can help local and regional governments to deliver their services. Let me also point out an example I just recently heard here in Geneva, the newest smart building of the United Nations, the so-called H building, is a very smart office building, but those who work inside, they are not as happy with it as those who are managing the building. And it gives me the idea to ask you the question, perhaps managing a citiverse gives a lot of freedom and effectiveness to those who will run it. Is it really something that the people, the users at the end, will profit also from? So with these questions, let me start and give the floor to Dr. Okan Geray and ask him to present us with his views on the citiverse. He is a strategic planning advisor at Dubai Digital Authority, but also importantly, he is the rapporteur of the ITU Study Group 20 on smart cities. He is chairman of the U4SSC Smart and Sustainable Cities. And perhaps most importantly, he's co-chair of the focus group on metaverse. So I think he is the very person who can advise us on how to look at the citiverse first. Dr. Geray, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Andreas. Geneva time, good afternoon, distinguished participants. As I share my screen, before I start my intervention, I would like to thank, in fact, the co-organizers of this event for inviting me to this very timely and also exciting discussion on citiverse. In the next few minutes, I just want to take you through maybe a couple of things, maybe briefly introduce to citiverse from a certain perspective, and then I will also highlight some of the metaverse strategy things that we have formulated in Dubai very briefly. And then I will also have a discussion on the challenges and opportunities that are ahead of us as we move forward with the concept of metaverse, but more specifically in the context of cities. So having said that, I am just going to discuss the challenges that are ahead of us. If you look at cities today, and these are numbers are actually directly coming from United Nations, most of the people live in cities today, the majority of people, and this number is even expected to increase to 70% by the middle of this century. And then if you look at the economic activities, more than 80% of the GDP is today essentially produced within the context of cities. And the cities also account for more than 70% of greenhouse gas emissions. And unfortunately, 99% of the global urban population breathe polluted air. So if you look at these, in a nutshell, we can have more statistics, but most of our social, economic, and environmental challenges today are manifested in the cities, in the urban environments. So this is the context that we are in. If we can solve these issues for the cities, I think it's going to help us achieve a major milestone in terms of also attaining the sustainable development goals. So then if you look at the citiverse, basically citiverse is the metaverse that's dedicated, that's essentially tailored to the needs of the cities and also its inhabitants, to their aspirations. So it's all about, in fact, essentially solving the challenges of cities by using metaverse as the enabling technology. But I want to mention that we should always have the real business point of view, which is the challenges that the cities face. And we have probably two types of challenges in the cities, or two types of target agendas that we have. We have the common collective agenda at the global level, which is captured by the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. That's our common agenda across the globe, actually. All of us are targeting to achieve these 17 goals, also captured under 169 targets, clearly articulated in the UN Sustainable Development Goals Agenda for 2030. So this is the common agenda. But on the other hand, each and every city has its own particular aspect, particular challenges, particular priorities. These are more specific to the city itself. So when we create the agenda for the cities, we in fact put these two things together. In some cases, there is a bit of an overlap between the city priorities and the UN SDGs. But in some cases, they are not necessarily overlapping. So we need to have a unified, almost city agenda. And that comes into play the metaverse. Metaverse is almost a special technology, an emerging technology, but a disruptive one also, that's going to help the cities accomplish their agenda at the end of the day. One thing that I want to probably highlight is metaverse is a special emerging technology, a nascent technology, in the sense that it's a bit different from the others. It's immersive, it has permanence in the way it operates, in the way it works. And also it creates almost a human-centric experience. It gives us this potential to create a human-centric experience for the citizens of the cities. So when we talk about, for example, people-centric cities, I think metaverse is one of those technologies which is closer to that side of the spectrum, where we can create an experience that would appeal to the citizens or the inhabitants of these cities. So essentially, that's the citiverse, which is tailored and dedicated to the needs of the cities. And it has an amazing, actually, opportunity, if we can harness this in the right way, to redesign the urban living, redesign urban planning, redefine the way we live in the cities, redefine the way we create economic opportunities, and also solve our economic challenges. So it's quite actually particular in that sense. I'm just going to take you through an example city, which is the city that I work in, actually, the Dubai itself, where last year Dubai has developed its own metaverse strategy, which essentially aims to make Dubai the #1 in the region and one of the top 10 cities globally in terms of metaverse economy. And the top line objectives in general say that we're going to quintuple, 5 times increase the number of blockchain and metaverse companies in Dubai. And we will also create 40,000 additional, we are aiming to create 40,000 additional jobs, virtual jobs, by 2030, so by the end of this decade. And the addition to the economy, the gross value of the addition would be $4 billion in Dubai in 5 years. Now, these are all achieved, of course, by leveraging not just metaverse, but we are synergistically combining Web3, the VR, AR, XR, and also the digital twins technologies around 5 main pillars in the strategy. So we're going to create use cases across different sectors in the city. And while doing that, we also want to foster talent in the city that's geared towards accomplishing the strategy. And we will also support this strategy through scalable and safe platforms, and also complement it with a regulatory approach that will be conducive to accomplishing this strategy. And this will all be captured through innovation at the city level. So it's kind of taking a maybe economic perspective, but also a holistic perspective by putting in place together the different almost components of the main top line objectives that we have at the city level. On the other hand, not only Dubai, but if you look at all the cities across the world, there are numerous challenges that we need to overcome. I think these challenges, if you think about them, they are not necessarily specific to metaverse. Whenever we encounter a new technology, a new emerging technology, these issues pop up. So it's not new to us. Those of us who are involved in city administrations, in digital transformation initiatives, all the way from e-government to smart government, smart city, digital transformation in digital cities, these issues are there. The good thing is we have some experience coming from the past dealing with all these other disruptive and emerging technologies, but there are also specific aspects pertaining to metaverse. So all these are issues that we're going to have to address along the way as cities if you want to achieve success for citiverse. I'm not going to go through the details of it. I think most of those are clear probably to the participants, but these are all ahead of us. And it's going to all determine, I think, whether we will have a bumpy road along the way or we're going to have a smooth ride almost in terms of harnessing this transformative potential posed by metaverse ahead of us. So having these challenges, I would like to commend actually ITU at this point for the established focus group that's addressing several issues pertaining to metaverse. The focus group was established, and there are 9 working groups at the moment working on different aspects of the metaverse. So it spans most of the topics that I mentioned earlier, if not all of them. And I'm humbled and also privileged to lead working group, co-chair actually, working group 7 on economic competition and regulation aspects regarding the metaverse. So we're working on those issues, but as you can see, there's a lot of work going on in parallel pertaining to technology issues, to security, safety, all these other areas. So the focus group is very essential in the sense that it's addressing pre-standardization issues. So the technical reports, the technical specifications that will get published within the focus group is going to help the standardization step, which is ahead of us after the focus group. So it's doing all that pre-work. And I also would like to commend ITU because this focus group has a broad stakeholder base today. It's composed of government, academia, private sector, NGOs, and civil society as well. So all these stakeholders are working together to identify various issues, discuss them openly, and put proposals on the table in terms of technical reports and technical specifications. So hopefully it's going to make this potential bumpy road ahead of us more seamless by addressing all these issues from different perspectives. But having said that, standardization and pre-standardization is very important. The focus group itself actually on metaverse encouraged ITU to establish a digital coalition on citiverse. And I'm actually one of the proponents of this idea. I wholeheartedly believe that standardization is necessary, but it's not sufficient. The cities, in order to harness this potential, this transformative potential that's ahead of us, standardization is a portion of the picture, but left alone on their own, the cities are going to have to reinvent the wheel in so many areas. They are going to have to come up with a lot of solutions pertaining to the challenges that I was mentioning earlier, instead of doing it on their own. And we have tens of or even hundreds of thousands of cities across the world. We're actually suggesting to create a neutral and accessible platform whereby cities can exchange knowledge, can exchange their experiences. And as I mentioned, standardization is one side of it, but there are several issues that we still need to actually address when it comes to citiverse. There are issues around governance. Should we centralize governance when it comes to citiverse, decentralize it, have a hybrid approach? There are successful solutions that will be created along the way. We already have successful use cases around the world. Can we share this knowledge between the cities? We're going actually beyond the standardization by doing those things. Can we provide a platform to identify common needs of cities? Can we share these best practices, solutions, guiding principles, guidelines? Can we create a sandbox, for example, to experiment these solutions that will address the agenda that I was alluding to earlier? Remember, I mentioned that we have a common agenda, but also a city-specific agenda, which when combined together, will make the agenda for the cities. But at the end of the day, there are so many synergies that arise across the globe in all these cities that there's a potential to almost capitalize, to leverage on, not just in terms of standardization, but also in terms of these other areas pertaining to cities. So I think this is going to be very important. It's going to be a very exciting, I think, next 5 years, probably a decade even ahead of us, whereby we not only use metaverse, but we synergistically combine all these technologies such as AI, digital twins, metaverse, blockchain, data, IoT. I think it's a very exciting time. Left again on their own, the cities will struggle with those issues. And if we just capitalize on one technology, we're going to only achieve a linear growth. But given that we have almost stretch targets for UN SDGs, it's very important to capitalize on the exponential effect of all these technologies being used together and help the cities achieve the potential of the citiverse. So I'd like to encourage actually all the cities to undertake this journey along the way. And we hope that we will achieve a greater good for the planet, for the humanity, and also for our economies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Garay, for this extensive and perfect set of the scene. I think you pointed out very important aspects like the technology part, the emerging and also destructive technology part of the metaverse, but also the question of standardization, which you mentioned it's necessary but not sufficient. And at the end of your presentation, you pointed out that for cities working together could help identify the city's needs and share best practices to help cities to achieve their maximum potential. And this is the perfect bridge to help me to bring the discussion to our next speaker who joined us, Mayor Van Pupe from Dodoma, who is not only a mayor, but also a lecturer at different universities, and whose career always focused on urbanization and population studies. And also, and perhaps most importantly for us today, he is passionate. I know it personally because I had the chance to meet him pursuing the Smart Dodoma mission, the development of the new capital in a smart way. So I would like to invite you, Davis, to share your views, to identify the needs your city faces, to bring the discussion forward. The floor is yours. Please switch on your mic.
Thank you, Andras. Can you hear me?
Thank you.
Thank you, Andras, and the rest of the groups. Sorry for coming in late. I'm really pleased that I'm one of those people you thought could contribute some experience from the African perspective. Africa not as a continent, but as a socio-economic difference with the rest of the world. Indeed, my contribution will be based on the very characteristics that we have for the urbanization in the developing countries. As we all know, currently, the way we look at the process of urbanization is like having a doomed sort of picture that it is associated with so many negative effects to the people, to the economy, and the whole spectrum. But again, we look upon cities, wherever they are in the world, to become centers for economic innovation, for centers for as hubs for economic development, etc., etc. But the catch is that when we have to revisit the attendant problems of urbanization, we note that the most salient features of urbanization in these countries is that it's rapid, and it is taking place in nearly stagnant economies. So the problems that we encounter in the case of that one, infrastructural development, which lie far beyond the rates of growth, but also problems of waste management are quite common, without forgetting that even when you have to raise some revenues for the local government, this is a problem because we normally lack data that would have otherwise helped us to do that. Issues of uncontrolled development are quite common, but also issues related to security and safety are among these problems. Now, if I will have to start by perceiving what I think citiverse represents, the fact that it is a coalition of the real world together with the virtual world gives us a new way of envisioning the urban landscape. So we really look upon having these cities in Africa, which currently are seen to be experiencing negative effects of urbanization. We want to turn the picture so that the cities rediscover their past glories, rediscover their past potential of contributing to economic development. And how do we do that one? The first point is that citiverse is really having a good potential because it enables us to obtain very, very relevant data that is close to reality, because now we have merged the virtual world and the real world into a synergy, which we see data being a very important thing that is going to emerge, more lab data. So we are going to make data-driven, data-informed decisions that are necessary for the sustainable urban development. But also the fact that when this technology emerges is well planned, the issue of people-centered citiverse is most common. And why do we do that one? Indeed, we are going to benefit quite a lot, provided it gives more or better services to the people that we serve, but also as centers of innovation. Again, citiverse is going to be very important in this kind of respect. Now, the inclusivity, that the fact that we are able to view data from all sorts of landscape is also going to give us a numerous advantage in terms of having an inclusive growth of the cities that we have. The other point that I may wish to make is the predictive power of to become a tool that will assist future planning for the cities, which for most of the time in the past has not been there. Of course, it's also important in terms of informing policy, because we are now able to see that with the amount of data that we are going to have, developing policy grounds for urban development is going to be so much appreciated. So in a nutshell, I would argue that given the rapid pace of urbanization and the attendant problems of infrastructural depletion, of weak economies due to inability to collect revenue, again, given the informality which is quite rampant in terms of development of land that has not been planned for the good use, as well as matter of security, we think with the available data that citiverse is going to come up with, will be in a better position to make more informed decisions and hence serve our people in a better way.
Thank you very much, Mayor Mampupe. It's always great to hear from a mayor that you look through a people-centered citiverse lens. And it's also telling that the lack of data in some cases is one of the biggest challenges, but that your vision is to transform it, this challenge, to an opportunity and to make data-driven decisions in the future using the citiverse. We heard already about a lot of different angles, and let me also again quote from the Asia Pacific Urban Forum, where one of the points was to enable access to local government services such as healthcare and business transactions to digital means, just to broaden the view even further. And I come to you, Christina Buetti, who is, I mentioned, the counselor on metaverse at ITU, with an ample knowledge on all aspects of this issue, from the IoT to sustainable smart cities, because you always worked in this field. So let me ask your global view, how you think citiverse can really help local governments on all those issues, and how the international institutions like ITU can contribute to this development.
Well, thank you so much, Andres. And, I think, so far it has been, very insightful discussion with, the considerations shared by the mayor, as well as from Okan, and direct experience, of course, from those that are working at the city with their inhabitants. And, you know, of course, when we look at the citiverse itself, first, I would like to acknowledge that the term itself, citizens, was coined by the, I would say actually the European Commission, but I should say probably more accurately from Cristina Martinez and well, her team working in the focus group itself, and you know, using, of course, all platforms that the EU has the availability to. So that gives us, you know, a new perspective on the intersection between metaverse and cities itself. And then, you know, when, sorry. Oops. There seemed to be some noise in the background, but it doesn't seem to be mine.
It's all.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, it was a bit difficult. So I was saying, you know, when we look really at the intersection itself between cities and metaverse, we see that, you know, cities are really initiating their path towards using this technology and maximizing its benefits. So from examples of cities like Seoul in Korea that launched its first ever metaverse platforms to provide real life administrative services, to the experience that we just had from Dubai to Finland, that, for example, worked on their first, you know, strategy, set their vision here in Europe, to, you know, cities like, or, you know, in Egypt, that they're using actually metaverse more to promote tourism. So there is also a difference in concept and use of the metaverse at the different level. And when we see actually itself how the metaverse can change or can help in municipalities, we see that, for example, it has great capacity for smart contracts that can automate and validate transactions, reducing bureaucracy delay. Metaverse can also enable decentralized systems for transparency and efficient urban governance. It can also give the possibility to create the virtual admin hubs for simplified access to government services, and can enable inhabitants, you know, to participate more actively in the governance and decision making, while providing real-time data analytics that can empower decision making, enhancing the city management. All of this, of course, it doesn't come without any challenges. There are still a lot of challenges that have to be addressed, from technical challenges that concerns interoperability. So definitely the fact that we have more than one citiverse, as we do have more than one metaverse. We have challenges related to privacy, security, societal challenges, including, you know, the fact that we must build, you know, a metaverse that is inclusive, that respects ethics and human rights. We have, of course, economic and competition challenges to be addressed, and, you know, governance is definitely probably one of the issues that will keep busy the policymakers for the next few years. In all of this, how the ITU as a UN agency is helping, you know, this dialogue. The ITU has been working, you know, through this new focus group, trying to be an international gathering, leveraging the excellent work that it is being done in different other platforms, as, you know, for example, what it is being done in different cities, what it is being done by other regional organizations, but also convening over 500 different experts that are debating, discussing, and, you know, and finding an agreement on how to solve these major challenges. As it was highlighted before, you know, standards, or the importance of standards, is certainly key, but is not, you know, sufficient, or is not the only solution to the issue. It has to be combined with, you know, policy and governance, and that's why, you know, the focus group itself has been working also on the development of a set of technical reports that looks also at the policy and regulatory challenges. There is actually a new report that has been, you know, approved during the last meeting that took place a few weeks ago under the leadership of Dr. Geray. And I really encourage all of you to read it. The focus group is also open to all, so it's also a call for those interested experts to join this group and work together. And for us, definitely, probably the most important part is to ensure that the metaverse that is built, it is a people-centered city metaverse. So as it was emphasized by the mayor, the idea is to use technology for people to make sure that, you know, the center are people, and that even, you know, when we look at how technologies can, you know, evolve, we make sure that it is done in a way that it empowers people, that, you know, we make sure that there is, you know, access to technology in an equitable manner. We respect also privacy while building trust and security, and we also build multi-stakeholder capacity. This is not something that we can do alone. We have to do it together. We have to work together. This is not, you know, a one organization, you know, work. And this is the reason why I think that the idea of, you know, launching this digital coalition on Citiverse is key. That will be the next highest priority for us at the ITU, to ensure that we build, you know, an open, inclusive digital coalition on Citiverse that, you know, will involve different regional partners, as well as cities, as well as, of course, the key players in this area. So stay tuned with us. We will, you know, definitely share more news on the digital coalition on Citiverse in the next few weeks. Thank you. Thank you so much, Andreas.
Thank you very much, Christina. Thank you for this hint at the end. It will keep us awake for the next couple of weeks. But most importantly, thank you for pointing out the different possibilities the Citiverse will provide for local and regional governments. Let me echo that the focus groups in general, but also this one in ITU, are open to all. So we encourage all the experts from the local level as well to join and take part on this discussion. Let me turn to you, Isabel. Isabel Wetzel is Program Management Officer at UN Habitat. UN Habitat, as you all know, is dedicated to work with local governments on urbanization issues. But before that, she worked at the World Bank, also on urban development issues, and has also wide experience in research, which we heard about data is a very important aspect, if I know correctly, from LSE, but also in the private sector. So your experience is rather broad from different angles, and I'm eager to hear now, with your hat from UN Habitat, how do you see this issue? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Andras, and it is a pleasure to be here today and to exchange thoughts, ideas, work with all of you, and especially those of you distinguished panelists also, who are here with me today. So I've already heard a lot of the things that have been said on this panel on data, privacy issues, etc. And I want to echo some of those things in a second. But let me first start from the perspective of where we work at UN Habitat on the topic. So we have a flagship program called the People-Centered Smart Cities program. where we work with a lot of the national and local governments that we work with at the UN level to support them in their digital transition journeys. So for us, the perspective coming in there is that we apply multi-level governance strategies to help build the skills and capacities of governments to develop or procure or even effectively use digital technologies in an inclusive, ethical, and sustainable way. And so one of the things that we did 1-2 years ago is that we had a global review of smart city practices. And some of the responses that came out of this review, interviewing all sorts of different stakeholders, was that cities struggle to deal with ethical issues associated with digital tech. And so that is a bit of a bringing us back to the basics, because we're talking very high level technologies. And in our work, one of the things that we see often is that we need to sometimes come back to the basics or foundational principles of the technologies that we are looking at or that we're trying to develop. If we don't have the right regulatory frameworks in place, a lot of what we're trying to achieve here at this high level cannot be achieved. And another response from that survey or global review was also that respondents reported limited engagement of residents in government smart city initiatives. So I think that point is now related to the issue around the digital divide, digital literacy, which we have also heard earlier. So I think summarizing that, it is quite evident that digital transformation processes for local governments have to be more evidence-based and provide practical examples, real-life examples and recommendations. And so this is something that we do at UN Habitat. We have developed all sorts of very practical tools for local governments, including a series of playbooks on these topics, so that cities have very practical tools that they can apply in their own local government contexts. And we've also heard earlier that, of course, any kind of digitalization processes at public institutions should be aligned with SDGs, and they should also respond to real needs of residents. So I just wanted to underline that and bring that into the discussion as well. That being said, of course, citiverses are enormous opportunities for not just residents, but also governments to delve into potential real-life solutions that we have, etc. But I think we need to remember that there's a lot of people around the world, around 3.7 billion people, that are actually still not connected. And to just illustrate that with some data, for instance, from Uganda, 46% of Ugandans use mobile internet, but only 16% actually use smartphones. And many of those that I have just mentioned actually rely on 2G internet. So with that in mind, it is going to be quite hard to roll out very complex technologies. And that is something that means that we need to put people at the center of any of these initiatives that we're looking at. We need to work on closing the digital divide, and we need to also address the risks that are there when it comes to exclusion of any kind of digitalization processes. Because if we don't do that, we risk not understanding fully what our privacy and security risks look like, and that will have a negative impact, particularly on vulnerable populations. And then on top of that, and that is connected, is that any kind of digital tools, metaverses, citiverses, digitalization processes require also resilient physical infrastructure. So Wi-Fi, electricity, mobile phone penetration, etc. And then, of course, when looking at the provision of services through citiverses, etc., we need increased digital literacy, universal internet access, and then in connection to that, we have to explore more multi-sectoral partnerships and support and sustainable governance structures. So, for instance, Where do NGOs come in to also advise the creators of new technologies accordingly? What kind of models of PPPs, public-private partnerships, can be explored? Where and how do we incorporate people into decision-making opportunities, and then also academia, of course. So that is a big sort of risk around the digital divide and digital literacy issues. I think we heard earlier also from the Honorable Mayor around challenges on limited connectivity, underdeveloped infrastructure. But then again, when you translate these challenges to opportunities, there's also opportunity for cities to collaborate, cities and countries and businesses to better collaborate, not just in this continent, but also globally. And then I also just wanted to mention that as UN Habitat, what we're also doing is we are at the international level hoping to come to a consensus very soon on what actually people-centered smart cities mean in practice for all governments around the world. So we're working on international guidelines on people-centered smart cities, which is a member state-driven process. So all member states have the chance to come together through expert group meetings, so appointing experts from the national governments to represent in designing and drafting and developing these international guidelines. And then we are also translating that to research and data findings through a world outlook on smart cities. So that is currently underway. And these processes are relevant because they give us a kind of umbrella under which now we work, we develop and design technologies in which then hopefully governments, local governments, etc., can take these forward at their own level. And then as a last point, I also just wanted to mention that, of course, we work a lot to support local governments in increasing capacities at the city level. So when working with local governments, often we realize that there's very limited capacity at the technology levels to actually adopt solutions and integrate them into the way that city governments operate. We can see that, for instance, when looking at the provision of or let's say the digitalization of services for residents. If that exists, often it exists at the national government level, so e-government services, and more governments are adopting these very important digital platforms. But we are also looking at what that means in terms of building the capacity on the local level. And when building that capacity, what we do is we make local governments think through what kind of support systems they require. We listen and understand where are the biggest demands so that the systems that are developed and designed are really demand-driven and that are also needs-based. So you identify where the biggest needs are, you build capacity and training around that. And so those are very important elements that need to be in place. So kind of thinking through what are the digital service standards that have to be in place? How do you ensure privacy, interoperability, equity, security issues in the kind of digital platforms that are there? But then also, how does a city then think through that as a kind of civic technology stack? So I've seen earlier in Christina's presentation also issues around or questions around digital identity. So cities or governments have to think through what kind of services they need to start thinking about from a digital perspective before you start building them. So because there is an incredible amount of demand to build services and platforms that can host now things around issuing licenses, permits, records, data management, etc. But a big part of that is then also seeing where is that data stored and exchanged? What does the system look like for a digital identity, etc. So coming back to my very first point, the key ingredient on that is really understanding users in the design of the systems that we have, ensuring interoperability between the different systems that are there, creating also a positive user experience. So when you're in those systems, how do you make sure that it is a positive experience as you're navigating through it? And then another last point I heard earlier was also around trust. It is important that any kind of digital systems we're looking at and building needs to be it needs to feel and be trustworthy. So so I think the issue around transparency over what kind of data is collected, how that data is used and shared and stored, etc., is incredibly important. I'll stop here. Very excited to see where this conversation is going, and of course also joining and participating in the working groups that have been set up, that have been discussing these topics for a very long time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Isabel, for all these diverse points you raised. Let me just echo your invitation that developing the people-centered smart cities concept and definition, all national and local governments are welcome to contribute to the discussion. I think it's very important that you not only provide practical tools and playbooks for the local governments, but you also open to listen to them during the processes. You also mentioned regulations, and one of the best regulators in the world, if I may say so, is definitely the European Commission, or at least that's the image you have, Christina. And that brings me to our last, but definitely not least, Cristina Martinez, who is the Deputy Head of the Smart Technologies for Communities unit at the European Commission. She's responsible for the development of digital policy for cities, but also previously she worked as a consultant in the private sector. So we once again will have a complex view. And I think the name of your unit predetermine that you are in a rather easy position to answer the first question, which was about the real needs of the people and the local governments versus the technology. Christina, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for your invitation first. Thank you for the question, which I think is quite interesting because it will help me perhaps to explain where this concept called citiverse comes from. And perhaps just to quickly address your point, I would like to coin but reverse perhaps the quotation that comes from John Fitzgerald Kennedy, who said, don't ask yourself what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And here I would do the opposite. I would say, don't ask, what you can do for the citiverse, but what the citiverse can do for you. We have defined this concept from the perspective that we want technology for a purpose, and putting the citizen in the center was for us the most important. We've been working with our colleagues from the UN Habitat in the past, and notably on this resolution. And I think that we have actually a lot in common. Although we all come from different backgrounds, we have more in common than things that separate us in our perspective of what technology is for. So we have converged on this necessity to design technology that is, as we've heard before, user-friendly, that serves a purpose, that helps citizens, but also local authorities actually to better serve their citizens, because there are a number of challenges that were explained by Mayor Mwamfupe that we need to address, and in an increasingly, let's say, more competitive, and the competition is to access basic resources, with a trend of urbanization that cannot be stopped, with a number of increasing challenges on the environmental side, we will have to do things in a much more efficient way. Whether technology will be the solution to this and whether it will help us solve all the challenges still needs to be seen. But what we definitely don't want is a technology or a new trend that would not address those issues. Allow me first to come back to why we came up with this concept of citiverse. So the European Commission has been investing a lot in its research program in the past, and obviously we wanted to support the industry that is now developing what we call new virtual worlds. However, because my team works for a long time already on smart cities, trying to support the deployment and the acquisition of data spaces, to manage technology like digital twins. So progressively, you know, accompanying this transition to a more digitalized world, we thought that immersive technology and an interconnected hub of different platforms would be of some use in the coming metaverse era, as long as it is designed in a way that is meeting indeed their objectives. So the first definition was inspired actually from the ISO IEC 23005 and the IEEE 2888 definitions and standards, sorry. We said, okay, what is a citiverse for us? It's a technical definition, by the way. It is an environment composed of a series of interconnected, distributed virtual worlds. So we insist very much on the decentralization perspective. That's our vision, representing their physical counterparts. Another important point, we are building on top of existing let's say hybrid systems like digital twins. So we want to digitalize the physical environment for the purpose of helping to address issues encountered in the physical environment and enhance, create new added value services. But we're not discussing here the creation of pure virtual worlds, okay? And so, of course, they have to be synchronized. You need a lot of, you know, low latency, a lot of immersiveness, fluid transition from one world to the other. High frequency and fidelity is, of course, very important. So we think about visualization, we think about compression of image, etc., etc. Each world, so it's different ecosystems that we call citiverses, if you wish, or citiverses, because we don't have a unique definition of what the citiverse will be. Will offer different kind of virtual goods and services, therefore creating added value, which will have to be monetized at some point, or at least there will be a value scheme that will help identify who is owning which assets and for what purpose. So creating a kind of thriving digital economy. And this, of course, will be done for citizens and other users like industry, like local authorities, to be represented in this environment as what we call them avatars. So in this ecology, there is a number of parameters that we will have to care for. The first one is data. We've heard this before. Fundamental. If we don't have big data, we don't have those rich environments. Another one is interfacing. It's very important that we improve the way we will interface. We will, let's say, create a user experience that is a bit more natural than the one we have now. AI technology will be key, definitely, because it will allow for a number of let's say services that were not possible before. It will help us perhaps manage the cows and shut the noise on the line in order to really, you know, make sense out of all this bunch of data. We are creating knowledge. This is fundamental. This is how we improve the way we live. This is how we improve a number of human activities. And this is, I think, the benefit to the experience. But of course, there is also the monetization of all these activities. So we hope that they will also bring opportunities for our industry. As I said, we very much root all this evolution in the digitalization of the physical environment. So we say we are going to move from the physical world to the citiverse, but we don't want to interrupt that link, and we want to maintain it because it's, for me, the most, let's say, reasonable way of developing technology by, you know, never disconnecting actually from the physical reality. Otherwise, you know, it can bring to situations like the ones today where we are perhaps living in an era where we don't see the impacts of our actions. Now, sorry to give you perhaps the EU perspective and a bit of the EU context here. So as Cristina Boetti said, we came up with this concept in a document that is what we call the Digital Europe Program. It's our instrument, financial instrument actually, to support the deployment of digital technology in Europe. And we issued a call, which is, by the way, still open until January, for citiverse pilots. But before that, there were a number of important developments. First, we have strengthened the industry around virtual and augmented reality technology. we set up a high-level group of experts to discuss what would be the possible policy impacts of those technologies. It's called the IFRAG, and they're going to issue a report by end of the year. There was a consultation with a random panel of citizens who discussed what are the values that they would like to see reflected in the citiverses, what are the obstacles, what are the elements that they like, what they don't like, and things that would inspire actually the policy making process. We published a study which looks at the potential economic benefits of metaverse in general, virtual worlds, and the citiverse. And we have issued in July a new communication on Web 4.0 and virtual worlds, which explains and presents our strategy to celebrate a new era that will be, as we said before, citizen-centric, but also compatible with EU values and principles. What are those principles? In a few words, we are first looking at, we're first looking at a citiverse that reflects EU values and principles. We have the European Charter of Fundamental Rights, we have the Digital Rights Chart, and we have a number of principles that have to do with interoperability, openness, accessibility, etc. Another point is that we want to give also European businesses the possibility to develop world-leading applications, to scale them up and grow. It is important for us to offer an alternative to, let's say, vendor-specific technologies. So the European Commission is investing on a lot of open solutions. They have to be powered by, as I said, open and highly distributed technologies and standards that enable interoperability between platforms. So the Commission has been investing a lot in supporting our standardization bodies, both at European level, at national, and also at international level, also contributing with a proposal actually in the ITU Smart Cities group for ensuring and creating this framework for, let's say, low-cost interoperability, as I call it. It's actually called the minimum interoperability mechanism framework. And finally, values, SDG compatible values like sustainability, inclusion, and accessibility will be at the core of technological developments, because our reality in Europe is an elderly population, is a population that is, like in any region of the world, very diverse, and we also have our issues with regards to inclusion. So it is fundamental that the interactions, but also the immersiveness, is made for everything and understandable and accessible by everybody. A word about policy implications of this. We heard before that the citiverse deployment will come with a lot of policy challenges, and I fully agree. And I think those challenges will probably have already been covered by some of our existing legislation in Europe. Let me give you just a few examples that we have developed in the last 5 years only. Just to give Andreas an opportunity to remind that the Commission is indeed famous for its regulation capacity. But it's true that we have addressed accountability and obligations of online platforms through the Digital Services Act. We have dealt with the free flow of data in the context of the Data Governance Act and the Data Act. We're calling for a trustworthy AI and trying to manage the risk posed by artificial intelligence in the currently proposed AI Act. There is the world-famous General Data Protection Regulation that is addressing issues relating to personal data, a huge challenge definitely in the coming citiverse. EU consumer law, the markets in crypto assets, that is addressing actually crypto assets that were not regulated by the existing financial services legislation. We are dealing with European digital identity, and we have digital identities through this new strategy. We have a directive on copyright. We have another one on accessibility, on web accessibility. And finally, we still have our EU labor standards that cover health and safety at work, and also the social security systems that will protect EU workers also active in the citiverse. So this to say that we were ready to actually start deploying a number of use cases that we're funding through the Digital Europe program. And we've asked our community of stakeholders, so cities represented by notably the Living in EU initiative or the Digital Mayors Assembly. What are those possible applications in the area of urban planning, of policy making, or of public service distribution, education, shopping, cultural activities, entertainment, etc., that you think would be the most useful to be funded with public money? So we had this exercise done with the Living in EU community, where they have classified use cases, and they were then assessed by a number of experts who came up with this preliminary vision of, what are the quick wins, what would be, the most reasonable use cases to be developed in the middle term, and then in the longer term. And it spans from, as you can see here, from virtual tourism to simulating urban flows, traffic patterns, up to emergency training of citizens in the most critical cases. A word about standardization, because working with our friends from ITU, we thought that it was about time to start reflecting on the standards or necessity actions that we should undertake in order to support the developments with open standards. We realized that maybe it's a bit premature to address standards at this stage, because most of the technologies that are needed to really create a fluid citiverse are not fully mature. But we still think that it's important to first, as I said, investigate on what are the user requirements that would shape our investments, and what are the elements of public interest, that the European Commission should be looking at in order to prepare also from a policy perspective the future deployment of those solutions. So we're not working on standards at this moment, but we are building and we are definitely shaping our discussions around the principles that were developed in the interoperability framework for smart cities and communities, and also the minimum interoperability mechanism framework that I mentioned before, which we hope will soon become an ITU standard. So we are working on this roadmap. It will be released by end of the year. It is an open document defined by a number of experts that are freely participating to a number of discussions. Everybody's invited to comment. We will present it before an ITU task group under the focus group on metaverse soon in November. And we are looking at, as I said, a number of standards issues. We're looking at the policy aspects, and we will make recommendations, which I hope will be also useful to other regions of the world, and definitely could be perhaps commented, and perhaps use cases coming from other places could enrich our document. This would be really appreciated. Finally, to say that to create this world that Dr. Geray was describing before, we are indeed sharing the view that a number of technologies will have to be further developed, from blockchain to computer vision, go through virtual economy aspects, avatar, social acceptability, very important also for our security and privacy issues that will need to be addressed. So we are going to invest in research, support a number of new technologies that will be trained in Europe, that will have to actually, as I said, fit into this policy framework. And then eventually contribute also to the global discussion on what are the preferred frameworks, the preferred architectures, and the principles that we can globally share among us to develop worlds, virtual worlds, hybrid worlds that will be meeting, let's say, a common level of understanding of how we think, humanity will be able to better develop and make use of technology in a way that will remain compatible with SDGs, which I think is, the values that will group us all. Finally, to finalize on my European prospects, we will be closing a call, launching a number of projects in this area, and also collecting the results of other investments which have to do with smart cities data space in Europe, and a public procurement action where we are offering a digital twin toolbox to cities and communities in Europe and across the world, actually, to be used and to be played with and developed and operated by anybody who wants to create a digital twin and later on create a citiverse on top of this foundation. I think I will stop here, but because this is call information which might not be so relevant in this context. But in any case, I'm happy to take any questions regarding our future plans, and very happy also to share with the distinguished panelists on the common elements that we've discussed today, which I think are quite encouraging. It means that that there is much more thing, you know, that we think that assemble us than separate us. So happy to stop here and take any question you may want to raise. Thank you very much, Christina. Thank you all our speakers for these great presentations. I echo from your presentation one very important point is that we have to follow the same principles as we follow in other regulatory issues, and we have to make sure we don't forget them. But I also take that you mentioned a long list of regulations, but you also mentioned a long list of potential applications. You gave a lot of ideas, and I'm sure that our audience appreciates that. But that this also brings me to a question, and let me turn to all of you for a next round of intervention. We are running a bit over time, but I hope you can still stay with us for a quick round of answers. I will put you all the questions I collected, and I leave to you to choose which one you would like to answer, or if you picked up something from the other speakers you would like to reflect on, I would absolutely encourage you. So there was this mention of ideas or innovations which happens on the local level, by businesses, by LRGs, by cities, and then the regulation which is at national and international level. So one of the questions is how we can bring these two worlds together to make sure that the regulation reflects the needs the inventors and developers on the ground needs. Another part of this question is that Citiverse is something we are developing now. How you can regulate something which is in the development and will happen in the future. So that's the second question. And there were a third question in the chat reflecting our speakers who said, we need more metadata on products and platforms and services. How you can imagine collecting these metadata in the future. And then I will read the last question while you are answering. So let me come back to the same order, and please choose your weapon. Answer the question you feel most fit. Dr. Garay, can I start with you?
All right, Andreas. Maybe I'm going to pick the data one because it's something that's dear to my heart also. I can't emphasize the importance of setting data governance right. And this is not just for metaverse or citiverse. Data is almost the common denominator in any digital transformation initiative, be it e-government or digital cities or metaverse or blockchain. It's very important to set it right in terms of data governance, data classification, data protection, data privacy, data sovereignty, data residency. If a city can establish this data governance in place, I think it's almost like an accelerator. The rest flows by itself when it comes to these different technologies that we are discussing. Again, be it blockchain, be it IoT, be it metaverse, it's almost like an accelerator that helps in any digital transformation initiative. That's been actually our experience in Dubai. And COVID was probably the best example of it. We'd established data governance prior to COVID, and we were able to utilize that to our benefit at the city level, not only in the healthcare area, but across all the sectors in general. So that was almost a proving point for us. But having said that, metaverse actually almost amplifies the data problem. in the sense that there is much more data collection in the metaverse than these other, let's say, emerging technologies that we've been discussing. It's amplified both in terms of size of the data, type of the data, and also the amount of data. So if the data governance is not in place, I think the cities are going to struggle even more. And just looking at maybe types of data, I'm not going to spend too much time, but there is additional geospatial telemetry kind of data, device specification data, network data in terms of bandwidth, proximity, behavioral data that metaverse collects. So the challenge is actually becoming higher. In addition to the things that I mentioned, which is maybe more foundational level, metaverse is adding almost more layers of data challenges for us. So that's very important. If we have at least the foundational data governance established right, I think the cities will be in a better position to handle these additional, let's say, challenges posed by metadata. One more thing that I want to add is, unfortunately, data has no boundaries today. You mentioned, for example, national level data governance or national level regulations, governance, local level. But these are like almost silos that we are establishing in our geographies. But data goes across in general. It's going to be, I think, very important to have a global dialogue, maybe, to make sure that our data, the exchange and sharing of data happens also at the global level. Economies almost enforce us. We have global supply chains today. We have global trade. We have global even services, both in the private sector and to a certain extent, even in the public sector. I can give examples where there are international investments, foreign direct investments coming into cities, nations. So if we can't resolve these issues at the global level, we will still face challenges moving forward. And I know there are even different, let's say, schools of thought when it comes to data governance at the global level today. I think these are all ahead of us to be addressed. But at least at the city level, we need that strong foundation for data so we can resolve metaverse and also global challenges ahead of us. Thank you, Andreas.
Thank you very much for this great answer. Mayor Van Poepe, any of the questions or other speakers? Please, your mic is muted.
I do appreciate the contribution from the different speakers, but it has also come into light that there are basic requirements that are necessary for the development of citiverse, one of which really is the policy environment. To what extent is the policy environment supportive of the growth of citiverse? And indeed here, we are looking into, until we are able to bridge the digital divide, then maybe we need to be more patient when it comes to the application of citiverse. But we cannot wait for the gap to be completely closed. We have to start, and those left behind may have to chase the pace. Otherwise, we cannot elevate. It has never happened that we are all at equal length of the digital level. Indeed, I do appreciate the digital divide as far as different countries are concerned, but nevertheless, that shouldn't be a hindrance. But it's also important to see the infrastructural basics. What is the basic? What's the bottom line for infrastructure development before it to come? And it's for this reason that really I found it very, very interesting when Isabel was talking about developing people-centered smart cities. We cannot hide under the banner of being in a developed world. We can have in our own way of looking at it. The standards will never be the same, much as we want the standards to be there, but they may not always be the same. But we'll have to lay hands on what is really available within our city economies. Otherwise, that was very interesting, and I'll be growing up to make a close follow-up with Isabel's contribution that of capacity building institutional setup on which the application of this merged technology is going to thrive. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Davis, and I'm really happy to hear that our mandate to connect local and international levels is working, because there's a dialogue which started here And I continue with the other speakers to answer the questions. Cristina Buetti, which question you choose?
I think probably some general considerations and, you know, it's challenging to set regulations before a technology is completely developed. But as it was also, you know, rightly highlighted by the mayor, it is important to put in place the right policy environment. That is absolutely necessary for cities. You know, I think that we also learned on our own skin that when COVID spread, many municipalities were not ready. They were simply not ready. They didn't have the policies, they didn't have the platforms, they didn't know how to react. And well, yes, there were cities that were ready. Dubai was certainly ready, you know, but many other cities worldwide were not ready. And the fact that they had to respond quickly was also, I think, you know, an alarm ring for them to learn the lessons and to be ready for future challenges, but also future opportunities. So I am confident about what I'm seeing already in the focus group on metaverse, on the many city representatives that are participating, which was a surprise to me. I was not ready for that type of participation. I was not ready to see so many city representatives being involved in the focus group on metaverse. But that's important because they bring their voice in it on something that it is being shaped, and it has to be shaped to, you know, respond to their needs, especially when we look at the citiverse, which is, you know, let's say the bits of the metaverse dedicated to cities. So in that context, yes, it's not easy, but there has to be an effort that has to be made. I also think that while appreciate that there are, you know, some good initiatives taken by cities, or some of the cities that certainly are leading this dialogue worldwide, it is also important to contextualize that we need to have regional and international efforts in place. I think that's extremely important to work in a way that, you know, especially when we look at shaping the citiverse, you know, it doesn't become a multitude of citiverses, which would be equal to what we have right now when we talk about smart city platforms. And, you know, I'll give you a concrete example. In the same country, I don't want to mention which country because otherwise it would seem like finger pointing at that specific country, but we have plenty of examples of, you know, cities in the same country that are not able to share data because they have two different platforms that are not able to interoperate. So we don't want to repeat that with the citiverse. And what was said by Okan is true. When we look at the metaverse, you know, the amount of data is not even comparable. It's much higher. So we need to rethink actually the way on how we are dealing with this issue at the policy level, at the technical level, and also for mayors at the city level, because that would be different. That will be different. And, you know, they'll have to think that they'll have to deal with me in a form of a digital avatar that will go into a virtual hub of the mayor, speaking to the mayor's digital avatar. And that digital avatar has to be him and not someone else that has stolen his avatar. So I may be faking a conversation with, you know, the mayor of the Dome. These are challenges which I believe have to be responded now before we actually face them in actual, well, it will become our real world in probably, I don't know, 5-10 years. That's the estimate of a full scale of the metaverse that we see right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cristina. It gives us some time to discuss. It's a short period of time, actually, 5 years in governance and regulation. Let's continue. Isabel, please, any thoughts to conclude?
Thank you very much. And I think I will also just leave a general reflection here. I think we have just heard how important the exchange is between different local governments or mayors in particular. And actually that brings me also to mentioning one point, which I didn't launched a global alliance of mayors and digital cooperation not long ago, just 2-3 months ago, which is just the beginning of hopefully a lot of local governments coming together for the purpose of now exchanging exactly their thoughts, their practices, ideas, examples of how they are doing on their own digital transformation journeys. And I think the platform is so important because it provides cities with a place where they can exchange what works for them and what doesn't. And as we just heard from Christina, there's a lot of questions to which we don't yet have responses when it comes to the metaverse, citiverses, etc. But some cities are already embarking on these journeys. Some cities will be the pioneers to kickstart processes that will hopefully then be replicated by other cities in their own respective contexts. And I think that is the direction that we're headed when looking at the kind of digital platforms, tools that we're adopting at the city level. There will be cities championing it. There will be cities that have the capacity to share that experience and that knowledge with others, so that when other cities embark on their journeys, they don't have to start from scratch. They can essentially now learn immediately from the lessons that come from the cities that have already done it. And you can, through that, save resources, share resources, and become smarter overall. And that's what the purpose of the platform is that I just mentioned, that we are hosting together with the UN Tech Envoy's office. And so I just wanted to leave that point on how important not only partnerships are with the private sector, etc., but also among the cities as we are navigating through that digital journey in our digital world. That cities have to work closely together to achieve the Global Digital Compact that we're working towards, to build their own resources, share them, to build their capacities as they're maybe still lacking it, but in a collective manner that also points very clearly at what cities need, what the citizens in those cities need, and how experiences can really be used to build on, so that we make cities smarter in a more inclusive, equitable, etc. way. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Isabel. Thank you for joining us. Christina Martinez.
Thank you. I think I will perhaps close by saying that the answer to some of these issues is probably governance. We start with governance and we have to finish with governance. The way we're addressing some of the issues that were mentioned, including in the question in the chat, is by setting up conversations. We have this power to convene in the European Commission, and we are putting together communities represented by mayors. Actually, we call it a Living in EU initiative. It was created 4 years ago, and it was the first time we were listening to users before designing any initiative. These people have now created a community of like-minded mayors who want to, take this journey in a way that is mindful with their own needs, values, principles, etc. They have signed a declaration called the Living in EU Declaration, which defines what it is to digitalize your communities, your cities, in a way that is compatible with those overall principles that I've mentioned earlier on. And they're also developing a number of projects together. For instance, just to name one, we have launched a call for creating a data space in Europe for smart cities to help collect all this sector data that comes from many, many places, different layers, different levels, national, EU, local level, and make them interoperable. So the way we've done this was to set up a project that would be defining a blueprint for the data space, and then sharing with potential users those elements and defining together what would be the the rules for sharing data, for accessing data, how to manage, create, and so on and so forth. We have thousands of data sets that are already now part of this European space. We hope it will grow. And that's how we are building actually then digital twins and the citiverse applications by actually, using this layer of data that is hopefully now compatible, interoperable, or at least that can be used in a quite a cost-efficient way. And then perhaps to finish on how this will hopefully bring us to this citiverse that will be both, as I said, I don't like to use federated because I think it's a word that is connoted in a very strong way here in Europe, but let's say interconnected. We will never propose from a public perspective a platform that would be ruled by one entity that will impose a number of standards or ways of managing data. This will never work. We need to, cater for the diversity we have in Europe and create this unity across Europe with a shared understanding of what are the rules for exchanging data and create new applications. So this will be always the way we will develop things. And this is why we have now launched a new initiative. It's a new legal instrument called an EDIC, a European Data Infrastructure Consortium, where member states are joining forces to create a commons of tools, software solutions, infrastructure solutions, develop projects together with cities and local communities. So this perhaps is a novelty for Europe because, we have a number of prerogatives associated with each layer of governance, and they're now coming together and discussing, okay, how can we develop digital twins in Europe? How can we connect them? And how will we in the future create the citiverse that is indeed the one that I have presented before? So I'm ending up with governance. As I said, it has to be something that we do collectively. We need to have this common understanding of why we need this technology, work on similar use cases. And that's the only way, I think, to justify all the investments that are made in this area with public money, but not only, and also give clarity to the market on where there is potential for scaling up solutions and therefore for creating more wealth and benefit for citizens. Voilà.
Thank you very much, Christina. Frank, thank you for all our speakers. Thank you, Christina, Isabel, Okan, Davis, for your insights, for sharing your views with us. I very much enjoyed how different but complementary your interventions were. And I'm really happy to hear about new initiatives like the Global Alliance of Mayors on Digital Transformation and Field Habitat, or the EDIC you just mentioned, Christina. With ITU, we also partnered in the initiative Partner to Connect, which is also about helping really bringing together the stakeholders on digital development. So it was a real pleasure from my side to being able to participate in this highly professional and, by the way, genderly perfectly balanced panel. So once again, thanks you for all our audience and especially for our speakers. Let's keep in touch. Let's continue the conversation. Global Cities Hub is here, and we are looking forward to work with all of you. Thank you, Christina and ITU again for co-organizing this webinar, and looking forward to work with you in the future. Thank you and bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.